There was an Indian man who was once known as the king of good times. In his era, he lived a life like royalty, throwing parties worth crores of rupees in a single night. While billionaires worldwide owned private jets, he had his own private Boeing 727. But today, his name is associated with one of the biggest fraud cases in Indian history. Yes, we are talking about Vijay Mallya. Kingfisher was the name that made him the owner of everything a common man dreams of. But what ultimately happened that this very name completely ruined him? Welcome to yet another video on Fact Central. In 1955, Vijay Mallya was born into a wealthy family, and from childhood, he saw nothing but money in his life. His father, Vittal Mallya, had no shortage of money because he controlled most of India's liquor industry. He was the director and largest shareholder of United Breweries. Due to his business nature, he was not well regarded across the country. He stayed away from the media, and it said that he often paid to stop negative news before it even ran. Vijay Mallya was his only son. From childhood, he lived a regal life, but his interests were unique. He was very fond of cars from a young age. And at a time when children in India played with tops and marbles, Vijay Mallya played with remote-controlled cars. Vittal Mallya never tried to take away the silver spoon from his mouth. And as a result, when Vijay grew up, his hobbies were similar. He became fond of real cars, not toy ones. He amassed a collection of nearly 250 vintage cars and over 200 horses, purely out of passion. Vittal Mallya didn't approve of this hobby, believing that a person with such passions couldn't become a good businessman. But the Maharaja's hobbies had no price. In 1982, Vijay Mallya won the Indian Grand Prix Award, claiming the trophy and becoming a national champion. He was about to take this hobby to the next level. But then an event occurred that changed the course of his life forever. Vittal Mallya suddenly died of a heart attack. Vijay was 28 at the time, and this shock changed his life. At an age when he wanted to be more carefree, the responsibility of managing his father's business empire fell on his shoulders. At that time, many close associates believed that because Vijay was accustomed to a royal lifestyle, he wouldn't be able to run such a large business empire. But Vijay did the exact opposite of what was expected. Among all of United Breweries' products, Kingfisher attracted Vijay the most because he himself had launched it a few years before his father's death. Since Vijay was a youngster himself at the time, he knew well that if Kingfisher was to be a hit in the market, there was only one way to target youngsters. Bangalore was the first city in India where the pub culture started, and this is where Kingfisher's success lay hidden. He introduced Kingfisher to youngsters in various ways, providing a good atmosphere in pubs, especially for girls, which became a viral trend. Youngsters would stay in pubs until 4 a.m. Bangalore, which once had only one pub, saw 40 new pubs open in 5 years, and Kingfisher directly benefited from this. In just a few years, Kingfisher transformed into a brand. People no longer asked for beer but for Kingfisher. At that time, many Indian politicians raised their voices against this Western culture. But Vijay didn't care. He only wanted to prove that he had elevated United Breweries' success to the sky, and there was no doubt about it. UB had become India's largest liquor manufacturer. In fact, 1 out of every 2 bottles sold was Kingfisher. Vijay Mallya was living a life fit for a king at that time. His name was quite inspiring in India, because at a time when buying even a simple car was a dream for most people in India, Mallya's wealth was unparalleled. But Mallya's good times wouldn't last forever. In many parts of India, alcohol was banned. Kingfisher's sales rapidly declined, and in banned states, the government seized numerous bottles and started running road rollers over them. This was a direct loss for Vijay Mallya, but it was just the beginning. After this, the Indian government tightened its noose around Vijay Mallya, creating a new problem. Even in states where selling liquor was permitted, advertising alcohol on television and in newspapers was now banned. This decision was made precisely when Mallya was focusing on his business growth. At this juncture, a method of advertising for Kingfisher was adopted known as surrogate advertising. This advertising technique is used worldwide, especially for products whose advertising is banned. In this, a brand markets its product under the guise of another product whose sales are not restricted. Kingfisher was already a well-known brand in India, so Vijay Mallya launched Kingfisher mineral water and soda water and began advertising them. Even though it was an ad for water, everyone knew what product was being marketed. In 1996, when India hosted the World Cup, Kingfisher also resorted to viral advertising to reach its target audience. He had succeeded in making Kingfisher a national brand, a brand whose name every other person knew. Vijay Mallya had learned the art of favoring people of all age groups. He started sponsoring every small and large event where there was media presence, and in this way the name Kingfisher inadvertently appeared in the media. Later, the Kingfisher calendar was also launched, featuring a photo shoot competition for Indian models. Many big names in Bollywood were born through this calendar, including Deepika Padukone, who won the Calendar Girl title in 2006 and had her first movie released in 2008. Similarly, names like Katrina Kaif and Nargis Fakhri also rose to prominence because of this calendar. Vijay Mallya himself chose the models for the Kingfisher calendar, and this calendar ran from 2003 for the next 19 years. Mallya advertised drinking culture in India to an extent that is difficult to fathom. There was nothing he didn't possess: wealth, fame, and most importantly, a brand that was no less than a goose that laid golden eggs. He lacked only one thing: power, which he also fulfilled by joining politics. There was only one thing he disliked intensely, and that was a name given to him related to his profession: the uncrowned king of alcohol, or the liquor baron. Inside, Mallya was bothered by the fact that he wasn't well regarded in India. Although everyone revolved around him, he also knew that it was all because of money. Vijay Mallya wanted to earn a name that would give him respect in society. That's why a dangerous plan was brewing in his mind, a plan that would snatch away Vijay Mallya's title of King of Good Times. In 2004, Vijay Mallya bought 12 Airbus A320 worth $204 million and announced the launch of a luxury airline under the Kingfisher name. He wanted to upgrade the common man's flying experience. The airline's commercials stated that they hired models, not flight attendants. A grand event was held for the airline's spectacular launch, inviting high-profile guests from across the country. Kingfisher Airlines was launched on his son's 18th birthday. It was a completely different kind of airline. This launch event made Kingfisher's name known worldwide, and it began to emerge as a lifestyle brand. From the airline's flight attendants to the food menu, Vijay Mallya selected everything himself, and the uniform for these models was designed by famous fashion designer Manu Vairaj Khosla. This airline had no first class or economy class, but it was called a luxury airline because Vijay claimed it had its own luxury class, Kingfisher class, and there was no doubt about it. The flight offered luxury services that other airlines could not provide at that ticket budget. In no time, Kingfisher transformed the airline industry in India. Slowly, Vijay Mallya's image as the liquor baron began to change, because he now had an airline in addition to selling liquor. Vijay Mallya was pouring money into Kingfisher Airlines like water. One day, during an Airbus factory tour, the sales team surrounded him and showed him such things that Mallya bought new planes worth $1 billion from them that very day. The focus shifted from a budget airline to premium class, which was not actually the market demand, because most travelers wanted to travel on a low budget, where there was no class before. A first class was now launched, serving the best amenities, luxury seating, premium service, and food that the majority of Indians had probably never eaten before, such as lobsters, a name many passengers were hearing for the first time. Due to the launch of new classes and the purchase of extra Airbuses, the airline's operational costs increased significantly. More ground staff and extra flight attendants were hired, but there was no significant impact on sales due to the lack of demand for luxury class. As a result, Kingfisher Airlines incurred a loss of 347 crore rupees in the first 18 months. This was a trivial amount for Vijay, and even in this condition, he continued to invest more money in the airline. Kingfisher Airlines initially operated only domestic flights, and Vijay Mallya was in a great hurry to launch international flights. But the problem was that no airline could launch international flights until it had 5 years of experience in domestic flights. Therefore, in his haste, he bought another airline called Air Deccan. Firstly, this deal was done at a much higher price than the market value. And secondly, it was borrowed money that Vijay Mallya took from Indian banks. His plan was simple: take loan money, invest it in the airline, and repay the loan upon getting returns. It sounds very simple, but in reality, it was a trap where the biggest condition was getting returns. Nevertheless, Kingfisher had now become an international airline, and passengers were quite happy. But internally, the airline was sinking deeper into debt. While all these matters were ongoing, Vijay Mallya was buying Formula One teams. Besides this, he bought cricket teams, which was his personal hobby, despite knowing that his airline was burdened with debt. Then something happened that put not only Indian but also airlines worldwide in trouble. In 2008, the American market experienced a recession. Stock markets crashed, fuel prices rose, and people's purchasing power decreased. Whenever there is a recession, people curb their expenses, and unnecessary travel is the first to be cut. Since US dollars are an international currency, this affects the entire world, and this time was no different. Fuel prices tripled. Companies canceled their trips, while tourists traveled less. In this situation, only those airlines could survive that did not indulge in unnecessary extravagant expenses. But Kingfisher Airlines was famous for its extravagant spending. They did not reduce their expenses even during the recession. Their rates were lower than other airlines and their services were excellent. There was no doubt that Kingfisher Airlines was running at a severe loss and its downfall was inevitable. When it finally crumbled, it revealed new issues. On September 12, 2011, a report titled PA in the Sky was published by Canadian research firm Veritas. What was published in this report exposed all the flaws of Kingfisher Airlines. Essentially, the Veritas firm noticed that while all airlines worldwide were suffering losses, Kingfisher's flights were providing excellent services to people despite often flying half empty. When they sensed something was wrong, they began an investigation. It was discovered that Kingfisher Airlines' expenses were higher than its sales. The report became even more interesting when it revealed that all these expenses were actually loan money that Kingfisher had taken from various banks. In October 2009, Idaho BI, a public sector bank, gave Kingfisher a $200 million loan. Normally, whenever a bank gives a loan, it first ensures that the borrower will indeed be able to repay the loan, for which they usually require some security. But Vijay Mallya showed false documents to the bank, explaining how he would benefit in the future and repay all the money. Since Kingfisher and Vijay Mallya were big names at the time, the bank passed the entire loan based solely on their reputation, which was a very irresponsible act. In 2009 and 2010, all of Kingfisher Airlines' total expenses were incurred either by taking loans or by availing services on credit, a figure that reached up to $7 billion. Veritas report caused a stir across India because it clearly stated that Kingfisher was on the verge of bankruptcy. After this report, Kingfisher stopped getting fuel on credit. Moreover, the situation reached a point where the catering service, which provided excellent food for passengers, had not been paid for several months and refused to provide any more food. This was a very difficult time for Kingfisher Airlines and Vijay Mallya. During this period, there was a shortage of food for passengers on flights, and on one occasion, flight attendants even offered their own food to passengers. After this, the day also came when Kingfisher Airlines staff salaries were stopped. They were given hope that the company would soon clear its losses and pay everyone's salaries. 6 months passed like this, but no one received a single rupee of their salary. The staff protested, but received nothing but promises. The sad part was that while all this was happening, and 900 employees hadn't received salaries for 6 months, Vijay Mallya was running a Formula One team and a cricket team. Undoubtedly, Kingfisher Airlines did not have money at that time, but Vijay Mallya did. There was no reduction in his lavish lifestyle, and when Kingfisher's employees saw all this, their anger grew further. Meanwhile, the income tax department in Mumbai seized Kingfisher Airlines' bank accounts twice for non-payment of taxes. In early 2012, more than half of Kingfisher's planes were grounded, and it also lost its title as a top Indian airline. In October 2012, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation suspended Kingfisher's license, and that was the last day for Kingfisher Airlines. Vijay Mallya had taken a total loan of 9,000 crore rupees from 17 Indian banks. Most of this money belonged to public sector banks, meaning it was the public's money. When the loan was not repaid, the banks filed a case against Vijay Mallya, stating that he was a willful defaulter, meaning he deliberately took loans from the bank even when he knew his airline was sinking. The CBI and Enforcement Directorate also conducted an inquiry into the entire matter, which revealed that Vijay Mallya had taken loans from banks using fake documents. The investigation also found evidence that the money taken to save Kingfisher Airlines was actually invested in his personal luxuries and other UB businesses. All these matters were one thing, But people's anger against Vijay Mallya increased further when, despite these circumstances, he celebrated his 68th birthday grandly in Goa, inviting famous singer Enrique Iglesias. Excluding other expenses of this party, Enrique's fee for attending a corporate event alone was $1.05 million. This means that, by one estimate, by spending just 20% of the party's cost, he could have paid at least 6 months' salary to his struggling employees. When legal action began against Vijay Mallya in India, he left India for the UK in 2016. Indian authorities cancelled his passport and sent a request to the UK government for his extradition. The Indian government wanted Mallya to be brought back so that his trial could take place in India. The extradition case in UK courts was quite lengthy, but in December 2018, the UK court decided that Vijay Mallya should be sent back to India. Mallya then appealed against the UK court's decision. On the other hand, insolvency cases were ongoing against Vijay Mallya in Indian courts, and judgments had also been delivered ordering the seizure of his properties. The Enforcement Directorate froze his Indian and international assets to facilitate recovery for the bags. Mallya's luxury cars, bungalows, and UB company shares were put up for auction. Vijay Mallya tried to settle with Indian courts and banks multiple times but had no success. After the collapse of Kingfisher Airlines, Vijay Mallya's public image deteriorated significantly. He was heavily criticized by the media and the public, especially because he was living a luxurious life in the UK while under pressure to repay debts in India. So far, Vijay Mallya's legal team has protected him, but efforts to bring him back to India are still ongoing. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found this video informative. If you are new to the channel, then please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video as much as possible.